Hey everyone, I'm Alex. I'm the creator behind Shadow Code. I'm really happy to have you here. Support the channel if you enjoy the content to keep doing what I love for you guys. Thanks for being here.
There is a silent predator in your inner circle right now. They are not using anger or force to control you. They are using your own empathy as a leash. By the end of this video, you will know exactly who they are. Look at your life right now and ask yourself a brutally honest question. Why are you so exhausted? You are the one who compromises, the one who forgives, the one who always gives people the benefit of the doubt. Yet you are the one left completely drained, while the people who take from you seem to be effortlessly thriving. You remember conversations word for word. You know exactly how much you have sacrificed, and yet somehow you are always the one left apologizing or questioning your own sanity. Have you ever wondered why someone with half your intelligence and a fraction of your character is living the peace and success you actually deserve? It is not bad luck, and it is certainly not a coincidence. It is because you are being played on a chessboard you do not even realize you are standing on. If you are finally tired of being the collateral damage in someone else's psychological game, hit that subscribe button right now to support the channel so I can keep building these survival guides for you. Welcome back to Shadow Code, where we stop pretending and start seeing the world exactly as it is. I can speak to you this directly because I used to be exactly like you. I was the ultimate people pleaser. I was the person who genuinely believed that if I was just nice enough, patient enough, and accommodating enough, the world would eventually reward my efforts. I thought that keeping my head down, doing the right thing, and being a safe space for others would naturally attract genuine people into my life. I bought into the beautiful, comforting lie that merit matters and that good people always finish first. But then my illusions completely shattered. I watched charismatic liars build massive circles of influence, while honest, hardworking people were completely ignored. I saw manipulative colleagues get the promotions I broke my back for. I witnessed calculated, selfish individuals build thriving lives, while the most authentic, kind-hearted people I knew were left lonely and empty-handed. That was the exact moment I stopped being a victim of my own naivety. That was the moment I realized we have all been conditioned. The rules they taught us in school about fairness, karma.
The rules they taught us in school about fairness, karma, and hard work were designed to keep us manageable, predictable, and ultimately powerless. The brutal truth that destroyed my worldview, but ultimately saved my life, is this. Reality does not reward authenticity. It does not respect your good intentions, and it does not care about your flawless character. Reality only respects psychological mastery. While you have been exhausting yourself playing by the rules of being a good person, others have been studying the dark, invisible mechanics of influence and control. They understand human behavior, and they know exactly how to pull your strings. I am not here to tell you to become a villain, and I am definitely not telling you to abandon your morals. But I am telling you that you can no longer afford to be innocent. You are operating in a world where your kindness is viewed as a vulnerability to be harvested. It is time to wake up.
To survive in this environment, you have to understand exactly how these psychological predators identify you in a crowd and systematically dismantle your boundaries. When they look at you, they do not see a kind soul with a big heart. They see a highly exploitable resource. They see a vending machine that dispenses endless patience, money,
time and forgiveness, just as long as they know which buttons to press. While you think you are having deep, vulnerable conversations late at night, they are quietly taking inventory of your past traumas, your deepest fears, and your most desperate desires. They are filing away that time you felt abandoned in childhood, or that insecurity you harbor about your intelligence. They are not listening to heal you. They are building a psychological profile to use as leverage later. But the trap never starts with cruelty, because if it did, you would run. Instead, it starts with an overwhelming, blinding wave of perfection. They text you good morning and good night, showering you with compliments like you are the most incredible human being they have ever encountered. They mirror your hopes and claim a soulmate connection before you have even known them long enough to finish a television series. This is not fate, and it is certainly not love.
This is love bombing, and it is a highly calculated tactic. They are deliberately rushing you into a state of emotional euphoria, so you become entirely dependent on their validation before your logical brain has a chance to evaluate their true character. They are not giving you affection freely. They are establishing an emotional debt. Once you are thoroughly hooked and dependent on that high, the affection is suddenly withdrawn, and the collection agency comes knocking. This is where your beautiful, empathetic nature is weaponized against you. They introduce guilt tripping, essentially presenting you with a receipt for every nice thing they ever did, and demanding total obedience in return. After everything I have sacrificed for you, this is how you treat me? They do not actually force you to comply with their demands. Instead, they expertly twist your compassion, making you feel so incredibly terrible that you force yourself to do whatever they want just to escape the overwhelming guilt. They outsource the manipulation directly to your own conscience. When guilt is not enough, they escalate to outright emotional blackmail. They hold the relationship, or even their own mental stability, hostage. If you really loved me, you would do this. Or even worse, if you leave me, I do not know if I can keep going. Suddenly, you are trapped. You are no longer an equal partner, a valued friend, or a respected colleague. You have been drafted as an unpaid, untrained emotional support worker, constantly sacrificing your own peace to keep their fragile world from imploding. Eventually, the sheer exhaustion forces you to push back. You gather your facts, organize your thoughts, and approach them calmly to set a boundary or address their behavior.
This is when you experience the most terrifying mind games human beings can inflict on one another. They will look you dead in the eye and flatly deny reality. I never said that. You are remembering it wrong. You are being dramatic again.
They slowly turn down the lights on your perception in a textbook display of gaslighting. They chip away at your confidence until you are literally asking them for permission to trust your own memory. If you hold your ground and refuse to be gaslit, they immediately deploy a psychological jujitsu move known as Darvo. They deny the behavior, attack your character by calling you crazy or paranoid, and then magically reverse the roles of victim and offender. You walked into that room to hold them accountable. Yet somehow, 20 minutes later, you are standing there comforting them, apologizing for being so insensitive as to confront them about the terrible thing they did to you. You walk away dizzy, wondering how you just became the villain in a story where you were the one bleeding. And to keep you perpetually off balance between these major conflicts, they subject you to a daily grind of passive-aggressive behavior and negging. They slam doors and offer one-word answers, radiating hostility while smiling and claiming everything is perfectly fine. They drop backhanded compliments, telling you that you are pretty smart for someone with your background, wrapping an insult in a sugar pill. The ambiguity is their shield. You feel the sting, but if you react, you look like the crazy, oversensitive one. They have perfectly mapped your insecurities, hijacked your empathy,
and completely distorted your reality. You end up working overtime, desperately trying to impress a person who has made a career out of something.
But before we can permanently dismantle their dark playbook, we have to face a deeply uncomfortable truth about our own participation in this toxic cycle. I know it hurts to hear this, because it completely shattered my own ego when I first realized it. But your victimhood is actually voluntary psychology. We absolutely love to point the finger and endlessly blame these toxic individuals for treating us so poorly. But we rarely stop to fiercely examine why we consistently choose to stay, endure it, and practically invite them back into our lives. Every single time you get intensely angry because someone did not appreciate your massive effort, you are voluntarily handing them the remote control to your internal state. You are essentially declaring to the universe that your emotional well-being completely depends on a profoundly selfish person suddenly deciding to act fairly. We have been heavily conditioned to believe that feeling deeply hurt by the careless actions of others makes us empathetic, sensitive, and morally superior. In reality, letting their behavior dictate your daily mood just makes you highly controllable and dangerously exploitable. Your emotional reactions are the exact invisible chains that keep you securely bound to these manipulators. Every time you lose your composure, explode in exhausted frustration, or break down crying while trying to defend your character, you are broadcasting exactly how to defeat you. Emotionally reactive people are nothing more than psychological slaves because their responses are perfectly predictable. Think about how desperately you try to prove that you are right or that you are fundamentally a good person the very moment they accuse you of being selfish. By fighting so incredibly hard for their validation, you are voluntarily handing them the ultimate authority to judge your worth as a human being, as if they desperately want you to be highly reactive because it serves their agenda. They want your precious energy redirected into endless emotional drama instead of strategic, self-preserving action.
The biggest, most destructive flaw in our people-pleasing programming is our fundamental misunderstanding of where our value actually comes from. We desperately think that being overly available, constantly helpful, and endlessly accommodating makes us incredibly valuable to the people we love. We falsely assume that if we just give them everything we have, they will eventually realize our worth and reciprocate that loyalty. It is time for you to absorb a brutal, undeniable law of human psychology that you will never learn in school. Abundance destroys value, while scarcity creates absolute psychological obsession. When you are always available, people do not appreciate your constant presence. They simply take it entirely for granted. When you automatically say yes to every single request, answer every late-night text immediately, and cancel your own plans to solve their manufactured crises, you are practically begging them to devalue you. We trick ourselves into thinking we are being noble martyrs for love, loyalty, and friendship, but we are actually just making ourselves totally forgettable. Human beings are fundamentally wired to respect what they cannot easily access and instantly dismiss what they can obtain with zero effort. Your time, your undivided attention, and your deep empathy all hold massive psychological weight when they are treated as strictly limited resources. If you constantly give your energy away for free, the market value of your love quickly drops to absolute zero.
So why do we keep giving away our most precious emotional resources without requiring anything in return? Because we are absolutely terrified of what might happen if we suddenly stop. We strictly refuse to set firm boundaries because we are completely paralyzed by the fear of conflict. We constantly imagine catastrophic, worst-case scenarios where saying a simple, polite no will instantly result in our total abandonment. This is the devastating internal fear-mongering that we constantly inflict upon ourselves on a daily basis. We manipulate ourselves out of our own power long before the other person even has to lift a single finger against us. We convince ourselves that keeping the peace in the room is somehow much more important than protecting the profound peace in our own minds. But repeatedly avoiding conflict does not magically save the relationship. It only ensures that you will slowly resent the very person you are trying so desperately to keep. You are actively participating in your own psychological destruction every single time you prioritize their temporary comfort over your own gripping reality. You cannot control the narcissists, the exploiters, and the emotional vampires wandering around in the real world. But you can absolutely stop volunteering to be their easiest, most reliable, and most forgiving target.
It is a remarkably bitter pill to swallow when you finally realize that your so-called niceness is often just a trauma response. It is a flawed defense mechanism, born out of a desperate, unhealed need to be universally liked and completely accepted. But taking full, unblinking accountability for your own internal self-sabotage is the only guaranteed way to finally break this exhausting, soul-crushing cycle.
Once you fully accept that you have been holding the keys to your own psychological prison, it is time to unlock the door and radically rewrite your rules of engagement. The first step in your strategic awakening is mastering the brutal art of information asymmetry. As people pleasers, our natural instinct is to overshare everything about our lives, our childhood traumas, and our daily insecurities because we falsely believe that radical transparency builds genuine intimacy. We lay all our cards on the table, desperately hoping the other person will honor our vulnerability and match it with their own. But psychologically dangerous people operate as locked vaults, while treating you like a completely open book. They listen intently, nodding along with a mask of fake empathy, while quietly cataloging your emotional triggers to use as leverage later. You have to immediately stop handing them the very ammunition they will inevitably use to shoot you down when they need compliance. Start treating your personal information, your deepest fears, and your long-term plans as highly classified assets. Ask caring questions, let them fill the silence, and let them do all the talking. Become an absolute master at gathering strategic intelligence on their hidden motivations and social insecurities while remaining a complete mystery yourself. When you know exactly what truly drives them, but they know absolutely nothing about your pressure points, you permanently strip away their ability to manipulate your reality.
Next, you must fundamentally change your psychological positioning and how you utilize social proof. Right now, you walk into every room, every relationship, and every negotiation, acting like a hopeful candidate, desperately auditioning for a role you are not sure you deserve. You over-explain your actions. You exhaustively list your good qualities, and you secretly hope someone will finally validate your worth.
You have to flip that dynamic immediately, because human beings do not evaluate you based on your objective moral goodness. They evaluate you based entirely on how you position yourself relative to them and what other people seem to think about you. If you consistently position yourself as someone who desperately needs their approval, they will unconsciously treat you like someone far beneath them. Instead, start acting as if your immense value is already an established, undeniable fact of the universe that requires absolutely no explanation. Stop asking for permission to take up space and start casually informing people of your decisions. Position yourself as the ultimate selector, carefully evaluating whether they actually deserve the high privilege of your time and energy.
When you treat yourself as an exclusive, highly selective resource, human psychology dictates that others will naturally compete to become your best option. But all of the strategic positioning will collapse overnight if you do not develop ruthless emotional discipline. Your deep empathy is a beautiful trait, but without rigid discipline, it is a massive liability that exploiters smell from a mile away. When a manipulator attempts to gaslight you or hit you with a heavily calculated guilt trip, your old programming tells you to panic, defend your character, and cry out for furious. You must train yourself to observe these predictable attacks clinically, as if you are a seasoned scientist watching a lab rat run through a maze.
When they say something wildly offensive, specifically to trigger you, do not take the bait. Instead, detach your ego completely and think to yourself, oh, they are trying to weaponize my empathy right now to distract me from their terrible behavior. How incredibly fascinating. When you stop reacting emotionally, their primary weapons instantly become useless plastic toys. They cannot distract you with manufactured drama. They cannot control you with unearned anger. And they certainly cannot manipulate you with false guilt. Your total silence and your unbothered emotional sovereignty will absolutely terrify them because they will realize they have permanently lost their remote control over your nervous system. Finally, you must replace your desperate need for immediate validation with strategic patience and invisible dependency creation. We waste so much of our precious breath arguing with people, trying to logically persuade them to respect our boundaries or acknowledge our sacrifices. Stop trying to argue your way into their respect, because nobody can ever argue with their own fundamental needs. Instead of aggressively demanding influence, quietly and patiently build it by becoming genuinely indispensable in ways they do not even realize at first. Identify what the people in your environment truly need to survive or succeed, whether it is a unique skill, a calming perspective, or a type of complex problem solving nobody else can handle. Provide that massive value consistently, but always strictly on your own terms, making sure they implicitly understand that access to your expertise is a highly conditional privilege, not a basic human right.
Over time, they will wake up and realize that replacing you would be far too costly and incredibly risky to their own comfort. You build unshakable psychological authority by letting them slowly realize they need you far more than you will ever need them. This is the true essence of strategic patience. You are no longer playing for the cheap, temporary high of being liked today. You are playing the sophisticated, long game to become entirely psychologically untouchable tomorrow.
When you finally reach that level of unshakable authority, you realize that stepping into your power was never about becoming the villain in someone else's story. You have been heavily conditioned by society to believe that learning the mechanics of psychological influence makes you manipulative, cold, and toxic. That conditioning is a convenient lie told by the exact same people who desperately want you to remain a predictable, easily controlled target. Understanding the dark realities of human behavior does not make you a bad person. It simply makes you immune to bad people. Let me be absolutely clear about this. Niceness without underlying psychological strength is not genuine kindness. It is just weakness disguised by really good marketing. Your intelligence without strategic boundaries is just raw potential waiting to be hijacked by someone with a much darker agenda. But when you finally combine your beautiful, authentic character with a razor-sharp understanding of psychological warfare, you become something entirely different. You become psychologically untouchable. You can still be deeply jealous, profoundly loving, and entirely authentic, but you will now do it from a fortress of absolute security rather than a basement of desperate fear. You will give your heart, your time, and your empathy only to those who have actively owned the high privilege of holding.
If you are finally done being a casualty in someone else's psychological game, I need you to make a physical declaration of your new boundaries. Hit that like button right now to seal your firm commitment to never returning to your naive victimhood. Share this video directly with another recovering people pleaser in your life who desperately needs to hear this harsh truth before they burn out completely. And make sure you subscribe to the channel because we are just getting started on this journey of building your permanent psychological sovereignty. I want to leave you with one final chilling thought. You have exactly 24 hours to decide what you are going to do with this new perspective. Because right now, at this very second, someone in your life is already deciding how to use your predictable kindness against you. You can no longer opt out of this game. You can only choose whether you are going to fight back with weapons or remain completely defenseless. Choose wisely. The hardest part about walking away from your people-pleasing programming is not setting the boundary itself. It is surviving the intense, manufactured guilt trip that immediately follows it. When you finally stop playing their twisted game, they will instantly accuse you of changing. They will look you in the eye and tell you that you have become cold, selfish, or completely unrecognizable. Let them. That accusation is not an insult. It is actually a badge of honor. It is the ultimate, undeniable proof that your new psychological armor is working flawlessly. You have to completely grieve the fantasy that these toxic individuals will ever validate your worth or apologize for draining you. The closure you are desperately waiting for from them is never going to arrive. Your closure is your own changed behavior. Starting tomorrow, your life is going to feel incredibly different. Your social circle might get much smaller. The frantic, late-night emergency texts from people who only need you to fix their problems will eventually stop. The manufactured drama will entirely fade away. And in that new, unfamiliar quiet space, you are finally going to meet the absolute most powerful version of yourself. You will finally have the surplus energy to build your own dreams instead of constantly repairing someone else's intentional nightmares. You will quickly discover that true, lasting peace is not found in keeping everyone around you perfectly comfortable. It is found in knowing exactly what your boundaries are and absolutely refusing to compromise them for cheap, temporary approval. This journey is not going to be comfortable, but I promise you from personal experience, the profound freedom on the other side is worth every single difficult conversation.
Now, I want to hear directly from you. Which of the manipulation tactics we broke down today, whether it is guilt-tripping, gaslighting, or love bombing, have you personally experienced the most? Drop your answer down in the comments section below so we can share our experiences and remind each other that we are no longer fighting this battle alone. If this video helped open your eyes and shift your perspective today, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Your support is exactly what gives me the drive to keep creating these psychological survival guides for you. Unlock the vault. Decode your life. I will see you in the next one.